We're going to take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair.
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron. Make sure to like and subscribe out there on YouTube, and always rate the show 5 stars. We are live on a Wednesday afternoon, and guess what? The rookies are at training camp, and also in just a couple days, the veterans will report. Ladies and gentlemen, we are just about at the start of training camp, and it feels good. And we'll have you covered all throughout the training camp on this show, so you're going to want to make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell anytime that we go live. We'll keep you updated with what is going on in a nice, easy format for you all. So today, we're breaking down the defensive tackles. We continue our countdown to camp as we are previewing all the different players that are on this team. And also, make sure to click the link down in the description, and you can get all of our player profiles on a free PDF that you can download, keep, read. Lots of interesting statistics that we have out there. I encourage you, test it out, see what is out there. But today, defensive tackles. And is this going to be the first position group that we say didn't get better? You got to stay tuned. We got to go through this because I think the defensive tackle group is one of the ones that has the most intrigue. And just like we always do, we're going to break down the departures, break down the depth chart, talk about all the different players to note at the defensive tackle position, go through some over-unders, and last but not least, did we get better at the defensive tackle spot? So without further ado, let's get into this. Let's talk about the departures at the defensive tackle spot. So if we flip over to the defensive tackle spot, we've really only lost one player, and that's Justin Jones. And heck, I've been someone who, when we signed Justin Jones, wasn't super impressed with that. Well, but when we got rid of him and when we had him playing, I never was the most impressed with just how he performed, but clearly other people were because he signed a pretty big year deal. But I will say, I thought that he was a solid player, and it wasn't like he was terrible, but you could always get better, and that's my biggest thing with Justin Jones. I didn't think that he was going to be that true 3-tech that we wanted. And also keep in mind, too, we are going to sign the person out, and now I'm blanking on the name, we're going to sign the defensive tackle out of the Cincinnati Bengals. Instead, he's got a knee injury, and it was supposed to be him and Justin Jones, but Justin Jones ends up being the only one that we end up acquiring, and ultimately, he becomes the quote-unquote 3 technique in the system. And ultimately, I thought he did okay when Montez Sweat came in and had some good production, and you started to see that now Justin Jones isn't being doubled or tripled, or he's just able to go against one person and everyone else is focused on Montez Sweat. So overall, the Justin Jones loss on paper, I don't think is huge, but it's about how do they replace Justin Jones in that depth chart. So let's actually go through and see the depth chart from last season. So if we're looking at last season's depth chart, Andrew Billings, Justin Jones are the 2 main starters. Then we have Gervon, Dexter, Zack Pickens as the backups. And back then, originally we thought that Zack Pickins was going to be the 3-tech, Gervon more the 1-tech, but obviously that has more so flipped. And then a couple other people, Travis Bell, remember him out of Kennesaw State that we drafted? We all really we enjoyed the player. He was the athletic defensive tackle that we drafted in the 7th round. Ultimately didn't pan out. And I remember when we were watching the preseason games, when I was watching the tape, I'm like, this guy is just a pinball. He's that short, stocky guy, but man, he was fast, he was quick, and he didn't have any moves. He was just more so pinballing off of blockers, and that's what I always think. Like, whenever I see someone doing that, they're just pinballing off of people, and Travis Bell ultimately not a Chicago Bear anymore, and he got picked off, I think it was by the Steelers, if I'm not wrong with that. But ultimately, Travis Bell, no longer a Chicago Bear, but then we also had Andrew Brown, Donovan Jeter, and Jalen Holmes. Andrew Brown was the only one more, that veteran that we were talking about, but nothing too crazy. So now let's talk about this year. In this year, now we're really replacing. This is where we go, okay, we have Justin Jones last year, replacing him with Gervon Dexter. Gervon Dexter moving up the depth chart. Zack Pickens, right, is most likely going to get an extra call this year because, hey, we need you as the number 3 defensive tackle in this rotation. And now this is where you get into the other defensive tackles. For those that are looking at my chart and for those that are also listening, I get these from ourlads.com. They're known for being the place to go and get the depth chart information. Michael Dwarmafor is currently listed as the number 2 defensive tackle behind Gervon Dexter. And then you look at the number 3, you have Byron Cowart, who has played some interior. And I know that Greg Gabriel is high on Byron Cowart. I think I heard that somewhere. And then also Keith Randolph Jr., the undrafted rookie free agent from Illinois. But then our 4 stringers, Deshaun Mallory, and then last but not least, Jamari Croma. He's the undrafted rookie free agent. I know that he's been defensive end. He's primarily been a defensive end in his career, but I did see some spots they put him at D tackle. So I just wanted to list him out here because he's kind of that tweener, that 275, 280 range where he's big on the outside, but he's small on the inside type of deal. But that's really the depth chart. You're really looking at that position battle for that number 4 defensive end. And those that are fans of this show have heard me say this time and time again. The Bears run those hockey lines. They run with 2 defensive tackles out, 2 defensive tackles in. They like to flip those out, in and out. And so, to me, that's why that number 4 defensive tackle is key, unless they feel like moving one of those defensive ends in a little bit. Or maybe with a new defensive coordinator, they go, listen, I know that that's the way that Eberflus likes to do things, but we're going to change things up a little bit because he's the defensive line guru. So the defensive line has not performed well. Listen to the defensive line guru. Let him do that. Let Flus be the back 7 type of guy. So let's get into these player breakdowns because I'm super excited to go through this because we also have Randolph that will be breaking down in these player profiles. So let's get into it and let's talk about the big man. Gervon Dexter, defensive tackle out of Florida, going into his second season, 6'6", 312. 312 seems light for him. Like, we've seen this man. Actually, maybe now he's 312. We all saw that he's kind of slimmed down going into camp. He's got this new slimmed down frame, but it's not, hey, he lost weight. It's more so he's getting more built. We all know what Aaron Donald looked like. That was a dude with a six-pack. That was a dude that was built. Gervon Dexter trying to get into that more slimmed down shape. That's what you want to see out of that 3-tech. Still probably has that next level human strength that we see on tape. But he's 22 years old, cap hit of $1.5 million, 20 tackles last season, 2.5 sacks, 0 forced fumbles, and had 29 pressures. Pretty darn good. And we said this last season. First off, also, PFF grade of 50.9, which was 101st among defensive tackles. But I'll say this about his season. You saw him towards the tail end. Gervon Dexter really putting it together. And this is something that was very impressive when we drafted him. And I remember going on to other shows besides this and saying, listen, Gervon Dexter is a talented individual. He's got all the strength. I just remember watching him on tape. And it is that not human-like strength that he possesses, where he can move someone around just at will when he was at Florida. But now he's got to learn how to be a defensive tackle, how to truly play the position. Not saying that anyone could kind of splice up a couple little scenes of him actually using his hands and playing well. But when I was looking at the NFL tape, I did see him playing better. He still plays high in his stance, but you see the progression on tape. You see him getting better, and that's why it's very promising with Gervon Dexter. Also, adjusting to this new system, coming out of Florida, he was very read and react. And I remember in my profile, I literally put comedically bad get off because it would take more than a second for him to get off. Now, he still doesn't have the greatest first step in the world, but maybe with him shedding some pounds, that's what we're going to see. So I'm excited to see Gervon Dexter, though, this year. And also, Gervon Dexter really exclusively playing at that 3 technique. We saw 25 snaps out of the A gap, which is more of that 1-0 tech. And then B gap, he had 328 snaps and 71 snaps over tackle. So really was more 3 tech or even played over tackle more than he played in the 1 technique role. So my question to all of you, will Gervon Dexter be the 3 technique that we want out of this system? Also, NJ, what's good? Bear down indeed. It's a good day. It's a good day. Hope you're doing well, my friend. And Gervon Dexter, is he going to be that 3 technique that we need this season? Because I hear a lot of people, and I listen to a lot of different Bear shows, people saying, we need him to be this. He's got to be this. And because he's got to be this, he's going to be better. But we also talked about this last season. Season 1, you can't really expect too much out of defensive tackles. It's that second season that they put it together. So this is another big season for another player going into that second season. And for Gervon Dexter, can he be the 3 technique that this team needs? I kind of go back to, we're putting almost too much pressure on him, and it's because we have questions all over this defensive line. And I think that's why he's got all this pressure, and also because he has the potential. It's that player in Madden that has the A+ rating and on potential that you want him to be the next best thing, the big piece. And also, NJ, very good point. Eric Washington can sure help. That's why we brought him in. We brought in this defensive line guru, Eric Washington, out of Buffalo. So maybe he can start training up a lot of these athletes that we have at the defensive line spot. Start training them on, hey, you guys are crazy good athletes. Let's teach you how to, it sounds so weird because it's at the professional level. Let's teach you how to play the position. Let's teach you how to use your hands. But it is that. And it's the whole Mike Tyson that said it? Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And that's the thing. As soon as they snap that ball, he's got to have a plan. And as soon as you get hit, what's your natural reaction with that? And I think that's where you see Gervon Dexter. He's got to kind of get better with his hands and get better just overall. So that's Gervon Dexter. That was the big person that I wanted to talk about. Also, 11.9% pass rush win rate, which was 30th in the NFL, as long as people had a minimum of 140 snaps, which honestly, that's very good. When you're talking about someone, I look at that to say, did you beat the guy in front of you? And Gervon Dexter was 30th in the NFL at beating the person in front of him when it came down to passing snaps. That's something that you want to see out of that young player. It's not about the sacks. It's not about that. It's about, can you beat the person in front of you? Sacks are nice, obviously. But if you're getting there, and that's where you see the pressures too, 29 pressures, that ain't bad. 2.5 sacks, not great, but he got pressures, he got pass rush. So to me, that's solid. But now let's go to the veteran. Andrew Billings, defensive tackle out of Baylor, going into his 8th season, 6'1", 311, 29 years old, and he signed that 2-year, $8 million extension in 2023. After he already signed that 1-year deal, they go, hey, this guy's playing pretty darn well. Let's give him this 2-year extension. And thankfully they did, because the man played well. 66.3 PFF grade, and that was good for 42nd in the NFL, right? He's never going to be the greatest defensive tackle of all time. He's just going to give you good play. That's what we said when we signed him. He's a good player. He's a good player in the NFL. So when you sign good players, they're going to do good things. And that's what Andrew Billings did. Even though that he's not known for being a pass rusher, he still had 23 pressures last season. No sacks, but 23 pressures, not half bad. Especially because he predominantly came in at that A gap. 306 snaps in that A gap and only 180 in the B gap. So getting double teamed a lot when you're in that A gap role, especially because he's more of that nose tackle. Even though we do run a 4-3, you still need someone, you need that Anthony Adams to take on those blockers. But also, an 11.7 pass rush win rate, 32nd in the NFL. So another pretty good pass rush win rate out of Andrew Billings, 27 tackles last season. And every time that I do one of these player profiles, I try to have some sort of question that we can talk about and bring something up that gets you thinking. And for Andrew Billings, I really couldn't think of much because yet again, he's a very foundationally sound player. He's not going to all of a sudden be the best defensive tackle. He's not going to be pushing for a Pro Bowl. He's not going to be like, oh my God, he's just unbelievable. But Andrew Billings, he's just going to be good. So the biggest question I could even put together was, will age get to him? Which I don't even think that is all that crazy to say. Because will age get to him? Yeah, eventually. He's only 29 though. And defensive tackles go well into their 30s. So really, there really wasn't a big question that I could bring up about Andrew Billings at all this year. So ultimately, Billings, you're doing pretty well. So let's get into the other storylines, the other players that I want to talk about, and that's Zack Pickens. Defensive tackle out of South Carolina, 24 years old, and also must have forgot to update the cap hit. It's not $3.5 million. It's going to be more in that $1 million range for those that have the graphics up right now. Definitely have to update that. But Zack Pickens going into his second season, 6'4", 300 pounds, more slimmed down, obviously. He was the first step quickness guy, another 5-star recruit that was coming out of high school. But also, when you look at his numbers last season, 20 tackles, 0.5 sacks, and only 8 pressures and 1 forced fumble. You look at his pass rush win rate, 7.2% pass rush win rate, which was 75th in the NFL. But actually, never mind. I also didn't update his PFF grade. I got to do that. It was around the 100s. It wasn't great. It was not 42nd. That I need to update as well. But Pickens, overall, he made some pops. And this is what we kind of talked about last season. Pickens, because of his first step quickness, was going to make pops. He was going to be the Brent Urban a little bit, where he would make one good play and you go, all right, that's it for the rest of the day. He make one play, that was it. And that's kind of what Zack Pickens did. He would make one big play, like one tackle for a loss, one whatever. Like he'd just make one good play, and then after that, you'd never hear from him again. And I think that's the big thing with Zack Pickens is he needs to be more just consistent. And so my question to all you that are watching, are we sleeping on Zack Pickens? Because everyone's talking about Gervon, Dexter. Are we sleeping on Zack Pickens? Or listen, no, we're not. And I think part of this is because Gervon Dexter looked better at the end of the season. Zack Pickens, you didn't really see that same progression out of him. You kind of saw him, the same Zack Pickens that you saw at the beginning of the year was the same at the end of the year. And when Johnny PayPal and I were previewing this, we kind of talked about that too, where Gervon's probably going to have the best, the better career and look better later on. Zack Pickens would look better earlier on. And I think that still felt true. Pickens looked a little bit better early, but Gervon looked significantly better later on and significantly was progressing. I think that's why there's not a lot of talk on Zack Pickens. Now, to answer my own question, do I think that we're sleeping on Zack Pickens? Do I think he can have a breakout year? I think it still falls on the whole Eric Washington piece. Eric Washington can hopefully get the most out of these players. But because we didn't see much, I'm not expecting some crazy production out of Pickens. All that I'm expecting is, hey, be a solid backup, still give us some of those splash plays, but really you have to hold it together. And I think, too, he was trying to play more of that one gap, trying to be more of that backup for Andrew Billings, even though he only had 54 snaps in the A gap, 181 in the B gap. He was still trying to play more on that interior, not necessarily the true 3-tech, because that was more of Gervon's role. So for Pickens, I think that with another year in this system, I think that he can look a little bit better, but I don't think it's going to be anything unbelievable. But I'd love to be wrong because I like his first step quickness. Yet again, lots of potential here. We'll just have to see. But let me know if I'm incorrect down in the comments, or if you're higher on Zack Pickens than maybe some others. And now, there's one more person that I want to talk about on this defensive tackle group. And I'll give you a hint. It's not Michael Dormifore. Yet again, sorry for the Dormifore family out there. To me, there is one person that I think could really be that fourth defensive tackle on this roster. Because as we're looking at this, yet again, Zack Pickens was playing more as the primary backup for Andrew Billings. And Gervon Dexter, really kind of that backup for Justin Jones. And also, obviously, got more of the playing time as that third D tackle. But there's someone in this position battle with the defensive tackles that I think ultimately could win this. Because you have Dormifore, Byron Cowart, who I think Cowart is probably he's the safe pick. He's the veteran that could come in, be your fourth string. I don't really want to see that. That's why Keith Randolph Jr. He's someone that we talked about when the Bears got him as an undrafted rookie free agent out of Illinois. 6'5", 300 pounds. And to me, when you put on that tape, his biggest strength is his ability to shoot the gap. And for those that don't know what shooting the gap is, it's something where if you stick your hand out and you pretend like it's the 5 offensive linemen, the little gap in between your fingers, that's gap shooting. You literally try and just as soon as they snap the ball, rather than go directly at your guy, you try to just get skinny and squeeze through the gap, which in college can work. And you saw if anyone remembers Hercules Mataafa, that was his calling card. He would just get skinny and just squeeze right through. That's what Keith Randolph did a lot at Illinois because he had a first-round draft pick right across from him. So there was that. He had Johnny Newton right there. So Keith Randolph Jr. was more so trying to get skinny, and you saw not necessarily the greatest stats out there. And he was projected to go more in the 5th round, ultimately went undrafted, but still 29 tackles, 3 sacks last season, 13 pressures, and it had a PFF grade of 66.2. And again, not amazing. This is an undrafted rookie free agent. And also, probably one of my biggest weaknesses for him is that he is kind of a tweener. And other little stats that I kind of put together, he's got good size for his frame because he's 6'5". He's got a very, very good frame. So you're looking that maybe we can add some more weight to him, get him bulked up, add more mass to his frame. And I think that's the thing that you like about him is some of that potential. But I would like to see a little bit more burst, especially since he is only 300 pounds. So since he is a little bit leaner, I want to see more of the true quickness. But when he gets up there, he's attacking. Like I said, he's shooting the gap. He's trying to break through the offensive line. He has this good energy to him. But also, yet again, less than ideal upper body strength, needs to just get bigger, get that NFL meat on the bones. So that's where, to me, he is someone that I'm looking out for. Because, yet again, undrafted rookie free agent, and I see the other people that we have out there, not a lot of good upside, I feel, with some of these players. So that's where, to me, Keith Randolph is someone that I'm hoping can ultimately be that fourth defensive tackle. But also, Broski, my friend, up in the chat, how is it going? It's been forever. It's been a while. Yet again, with some of these live shows going. So yeah, we'll see. But Broski's saying Pickens breakout player this season. Broski calling it in the chat. I'd love to see it. Yet again, I'd love to see Pickens break out for sure. So that's the player profiles, the player breakdowns right now. Now it's time to get into some overs and unders. So with some of these, I'm grabbing them from last season and bringing them in. Also, NJ saying good tape on Jamari Chroma as a defensive end as well. Yeah, that's where I did see some people having him as a D tackle. I do think he's a defensive end. So that's why I put some of the question marks. In the defensive end ones, he's out there normal, but he is going to be a very good athlete when he's out there. But let's talk about the overs and unders, shall we? So overs and unders strictly from a defensive tackle perspective. So sack leader last season was 4.5 sacks. So I'm asking you, the people, 4.5 sacks at defensive tackle. Will the leader at the defensive tackle position have over or under 4.5 sacks? Right? It kind of gets you thinking. And when I hear 4.5 sacks, I feel like 4.5 sacks is it's low, but it's high for a defensive tackle, right? If Gervon had 5, we'd feel good. But I think ultimately, 5 should be the goal for Gervon Dexter. I was looking at some of the defensive tackles, and I was actually kind of surprised. I was counting, and there was over 20 that had 5 or more sacks, and at least. So to me, if you want to be a top 30, top 32 defensive tackle, you should hope for that big jump. You should hope for Gervon to look a lot nicer and a lot better this season. So my hope is that it should be higher. If it's higher, we feel good about Gervon Dexter with the over. But if it is 4.5, I think we're kind of just shrugging our shoulders. If it's less, then I think we're going, all right, we need some defensive tackles. We need something to improve this defensive tackle group. But yet again, let me know what you think. Also, Broski saying it's been a while is right. It has been. I'm coming in and out with some of these live shows, so I'm hoping to get more consistent with it as we're getting closer to the season. So trying to get back to that whole Wednesday, Sunday type of grind with everything. So hopefully it's sooner rather than later, especially since season's coming up. So yeah, but I'm excited for it. So I'm going to go, you know what, just for the optimism's sake, I'll say over. I'll say 5 because I think that 5 should be the goal for our defensive tackles, just as long as you got 1, right? Come on, we got to get better at this. And especially since last year we didn't have that, I'm going to go over because I really want that out there. NJ saying I'd be happy if Gervon Dexter has 40 plus pressures with 6 sacks. That would be great. Honestly, if he had 40 plus pressures with 6 sacks, that's a successful season in my eyes. But yeah, we'll see. Next, rushing yards. This is just overall. How many rushing yards will the Bears allow? 86.4 last year was the number that we had. And for me, we were phenomenal against the run last season. We were incredibly great. We were one of the best run defenses out there. And that's why I'll say just a little bit over. I'll say it's in the 90s. It's still going to be very good. I think we're going to be great. But I think with 86, that was just really good. So I think I'm just going to kind of hedge this and say that it's going to be higher. It's going to be over. It's going to be over 86 by just a little bit. I think that you're going to see that passing yards go down, and then you're going to see maybe the rushing yards go a little bit higher. Only thing that would kind of push against that is that Matt Eberflus is going to want to stop the run. That's his calling card. And also, we don't have, the 4 weeks with Alan Williams like we had last season. We have nothing but the Flus, and that's where some of these overall defensive stats I think we'll see will be a little bit better. So now this goes to yards per carry at 3.8 last season. Yet again, very good defensive front. Very good defense against the run. And yet again with this, I'll cheat. I'll just say, you know what? It's going to be over rather than 3.8. I think it's going to be 4. I'm just going to give a little bump up to that 4 level. And last but not least, rushing touchdowns with 8. That's insane. I'm going to say over again. And I'm just going to go with round numbers. I'm going to go with 10. Because yet again, I think that they're going to be good. I think that they're going to be better in a lot of aspects. But they were like the best run defense team last season. I think that kind of regresses back a little bit. But then the pass defense gets better. So then overall, you'll probably look at the numbers and say the defense got better. So it's negative, quote unquote, but I think overall they're going to be better as a defensive unit. So yeah, that's what I have. Let me know if you disagree with my overs and unders there. But let's get into it, shall we? Let's get into the last. Did we get better at the defensive line group? At the defensive tackle group, I should add. Because this to me, as I'm thinking through, because we still need to go through the quarterbacks and we still need to go through defensive ends. This to me is probably the most difficult one for me to choose because all the other ones seem easy. All the other ones are like Linebackers, it was, okay, well, we didn't do anything, but you expect some just progression out of this unit. But with this is where I get a little hung up, and I'm curious what y'all think out there in the comments. Because you go from Andrew Billings and Justin Jones. You lose Justin Jones. You haven't replaced Justin Jones. But like I mentioned, I do think Zack Pickens is going to get a little bit better. Andrew Billings is similar to like a TJ Edwards. He's going to be Andrew Billings. You know what you're getting out of Andrew Billings. And then I do believe that Gervon Dexter will be better. And so this is the dilemma for me is, does Gervon Dexter getting better and, Pickens with his little bit of improvement cancel out the fact that you got rid of Justin Jones and you lost Justin Jones? And that to me is my biggest dilemma with this unit is you got rid of Justin Jones. How much better is Gervon Dexter going to be this season? And does that cancel it out? And that's why to me, guys, we had to be down on something. I think Gervon will be better. I think Pickens will be better. I think Billings will be Billings. But I think with the loss of just Justin Jones, the depth, I think that's where I'm going to say, right, I don't know who that fourth person is. I don't know how this depth is. And yes, I'm going to worry about the depth. To me, I'm going to say this is the only position group so far that has gotten worse. I know, right? Someone has disliked this video right about now. But I got to report, I think that because you lost Justin Jones and you haven't replaced him, I don't think that that's really out of line too much. But I do think Pickens will be better. I do think that Gervon Dexter will be better. So overall, to me, you know what? One had to be down. Otherwise, we'd be claimed as homers. But this is not a downside because I am excited about the Chicago Bears team. And if you haven't already, if you're watching right now, hit the like button right down there. I don't have the cool little light up graphic on YouTube where it kind of lights this stuff up. But yeah, click like, subscribe, because we're going to have you covered with all training camp coverage. I'll be breaking it down what is going on across Chicago Bears training camp like I've done for the past couple of years. If you haven't been a part of our coverage, welcome aboard. Tell a friend, like and subscribe. Also, download the show everywhere that you get your podcasts. NJ Broski, it was nice seeing all y'all out there in the comments. And with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair and you know that she